Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. Today we are talking about Dunk and Egg, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I was going to do a Lord of the Rings live stream today, but the trailer, the first trailer for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms dropped today. There was a panel at New York Comic Con. George R. R. Martin was there, Ira Parker, the showrunner for Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and the two main stars of the show were both there. And as a part of that, they dropped the trailer. Now, I'm not going to do a full trailer breakdown here. There, I'm sure, are plenty of places you can go and get that. So I will just sort of say that I thought it was great. I loved it. It felt like it captured the right feel for Dunk and Egg. We will unpack this a whole lot more in a moment, I'm sure. I would love to know, though, as I'm just introducing this, if anyone was there. I know there were one or two people in the chat who were at the New York Comic Con when they were showing the trailer, when George R. R. Martin was there. What happened? Was there anything good? I will happily repeat what you say back out to a slightly wider audience. But in terms of the trailer, before we get into the detail, I'm going to be talking about the books, the Dunk and Egg stories as a whole. But let's talk about the trailer first, as we're here. I thought it was great. I thought that one of the things they've been saying from the beginning with this was they wanted this to be a slightly different feel to Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. They wanted this to be what the books are, what the novellas are, which is lighter, more fun, funnier, definitely, and probably more family friendly and less focused in on the detail and the mega plot. We're just there seeing these things through the eyes of Dunk, who is a fantastic character. Who, if you've never met him, if you've not read the books, then he is good, wholesome. His heart is in the right place all the way through this. He is a knight, a hedge knight, as the story starts. Although little asterisk on that, we will come back to it. And he, as a character, he's probably not the brightest. One of the things that he keeps on repeating to himself is "Dunk the Lunk, thicker than a castle wall." He does not think that he's the cleverest person there, but he's got this huge sense of what is right and what is wrong, and he will intervene when necessary, when he thinks that somebody is being oppressed, when he thinks that right is being overruled. He will just step in, regardless of what it means for him, because he wants to do the right thing. He is, in the best of senses, in George R. R. Martin's world, he is a true knight. He is there sworn to defend the weak, the defenseless, women and children, and he does. And that is the heart of this. He is this character. We see it all. The books are written, the novellas are written. We've got three of them. They're written from his POV. We don't really stray from this in the way that in A Song of Ice and Fire, we have lots of different POVs coming in from all over the place. This really is Dunk's story. Through his eyes, we see Egg, his squire, who, and I will say up front, there will be spoilers here. Where the books have been out for a while, the novellas, I'll call them books or novellas. There are three of them. They are technically novella length. They were packaged together as A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, but we've got three. We've got the Hedge Knight, we've got the Swan Sword, and we've got the Mystery Knight. And those three cover a period of, let's say, 3-4 years of the life of these two characters. Dunk, who will be known as Sir Duncan the Tall, and Egg, his squire, who is the future Aegon V. So where they're set in the whole kind of time span of A Song of Ice and Fire is they're roughly halfway between the Dance of the Dragons, House of the Dragon, and A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. When I say they're roughly halfway, they are spanning the period of Egg's life, or Dunk and Egg's lives. So Egg himself is quite easy to remember. He is born in the year 200. Now, the Dance of the Dragons is about the year 130, so we're 70 odd years after that. The events of A Song of Ice and Fire is around the year 300, so we're about 100 years before that. But the stories that we have George R. R. Martin has told us, span their lives, which means that we're going to go all the way through to 259. So we will be almost within touching distance of A Song of Ice and Fire by the time we end this. The first three we have, however, are very much when Dunk is a teenager, Egg is still a boy, and they've got their whole lives ahead of them. The situation for the stories is that Egg is a Targaryen, but he is a long way from the throne. At this moment in time, there are lots of Targaryens. He is the fourth son of a fourth son of the king. So he is not expecting to inherit. He's not expecting to inherit anything. His brother Aemon, who we know as Maester Aemon, has been sent off down to the Citadel. He's one Targaryen too many. Let's just put him down there, make him become a Maester. We don't need him in the line of succession. Egg is similarly so far down the line of succession, people don't even think about him, which is why he is allowed to go off and be the squire to this random hedge knight wandering the Seven Kingdoms. And that is what these stories are. It is the story of these two characters as they wander the Seven Kingdoms. Egg is a Targaryen, but that's a secret. He shaves his head. He's bald like an egg, and he doesn't reveal to people. Certainly in the first three stories, one of the main drivers is the fact that he's secret. Nobody knows exactly who he is. At the end of each of those stories, in different ways, then his identity is revealed to certain people, but the main narrative of the story does not rely on him being a Targaryen. The main narrative driver in all of them actually is Dunk and his sense of what is right and what he ought to be doing. And Egg is there trying to learn from him. So we have these stories. They're a lot more PG. They're a lot more family friendly. They're a lot less grimdark. I would say probably optimistic is a good way of uplifting is a good way of describing them. And from what we've heard from the showrunner, that is what they're trying to do here on the TV show. They are trying to give it a warmer palette of colours. A lot of people, when they saw the trailer and the promo images that we've had so far, they say, "Oh, there's colour here. There's light in a way that we've kind of got used to with House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones later seasons. Things were kind of dark and moody. Here it's light and bright, and we can see stuff." Similarly, one of the things they've said is that they're not going to have a theme tune. They're not going to do the Game of Thrones theme tune at the beginning. They're not going to have a new theme tune. This is going to make it feel different. And also the length of these episodes and the length of the season is a lot shorter. So we're not going to have 8-10 episodes of 45 minutes to an hour. We've got 6 episodes of half an hour. That is almost kind of like sitcom length. If you're trying to think of how long an episode is, that's like a longish sitcom, not a serious HBO drama. So what we're looking at here is a very different feel. For what it's worth, I think I probably said at the time, I think probably about 3 hours feels right in terms of telling the story. I don't think if they padded it out even more, then I would be a bit concerned that maybe they've added extra stuff in there. If it was much shorter than that, then I'd start worrying that they haven't included all of the story. But about 3 hours feels about right. We don't know yet because we've not seen it, obviously. All we've had is this one trailer, but so far, fingers crossed, this is looking quite good. I will just pause for one moment just to see whether we've got anything in the chat. I know there were some people who were there. Let's have a quick flick through. Fantasy Haven apparently did a live stream of the Comic-Con, so do check that one out. Mark Schieser saying Guten Abend allerseits, and to you too. And just have a quick flick through. Cannibal the Dragon asking if I've got the graphic novel version of the books. I don't actually own it, but I have read it, and yeah, they're very good. The graphic novels work really well. Carl Karsnark saying good casting. Yeah, that's one thing I would say here. We've obviously not seen the episodes yet, but whoever the casting director is for Game of Thrones House of the Dragon, I don't know if it's the same person, whether they change them, but they normally get it absolutely right. Here, Dunk, Egg, I'd never heard of either actor before, but they both, from what we've seen, seem absolutely perfect. Added to which, the actor, here's my prediction. I've forgotten his name. I have to admit, someone in the chat will remind me. The actor who's playing Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm, I think he's going to be brilliant. I think he's exactly right for that part. Aerion Targaryen as well, I think looks fantastic. So yeah, the casting looks really good. Cinematography looks really good. The whole the structure around this, I'm happy with. It's obviously whether the storyline and things like that work, but so far I am feeling quite positive. Sam Clontz II saying very pleased, optimistic that it'll be a good show. Andrew Kay saying does seem to hit the right beats, lighter, some humor, heavy with the pseudo medieval stuff. Yeah, absolutely. This is for those who've not read the story. So this is to give the context. There are 3 novellas. The first one, The Hedge Knight, is season 1. And that's what we've got now. So they have, as I understand it, soft commissioned seasons 2 and 3, which means that they are going to go ahead and record them, get them filmed. But we're going to have 1 season per story. And yeah, so this is I think quite promising, because George R. R. Martin, he has, feel free to add as many caveats to this as you wish. George R. R. Martin has said again, oh, I don't want them to overtake my stories on this. I actually think, and that obviously is what happened with Game of Thrones, I actually think probably what's going to happen here is that even if he's not finished, because he said he's not going to do more Dunk and Egg until he's finished The Winds of Winter, don't hold him to that. It wouldn't surprise me if he finishes off a Dunk and Egg story before then. But I don't think that they will go ahead of him in this. I think that they will be waiting for him. I think that they have kind of learnt their lesson a little bit over in HBO. But in terms of the structure of the stories, I've got questions, I should probably say. I'm quite excited talking about this trailer, but I've got questions from my patrons. I will come to them in just one moment. But the structure of the stories, we've got the 3 already. George R. R. Martin has said that he is going to use these stories to tell the whole life story of these 2 characters, which takes them all the way up to the tragedy at Summerhall, which is the end of both of their lives. He's given various numbers on how many stories this might be. The most recent number he gave was 12, which seems about right. We've got 3. He's half written and then abandoned because he wanted to focus back in on The Winds of Winter, the next story, or what was then supposed to be the next story, which had the working title The She-Wolves of Winterfell, which was going to be based up in Winterfell, and be focused on what was a succession crisis at the time happening up there. A lot of the male heirs, one after another, had died. They were fighting the Iron Islands. It all got a bit complicated. But Dunk and Egg are, when we last see them, thinking they're going to head up towards the wall. Dunk always thought, I kind of like to see the wall. And a little part of him wondered whether his father might be there. Again, we'll pick up on who his parentage might be a little bit later. But the bit of the narrative that we're at is them roughly heading north. Now, another story that George R. R. Martin says that he has mapped out is with the working title The Village Hero, which is going to happen in the Riverlands. This is probably going to be trying to negotiate some kind of deal between the Blackwoods and the Brackens. He's also gone on record in one of his blog posts as saying that he thinks maybe they should do one in Dawn. He definitely thinks perhaps we should meet Maester Aemon, who's down in Old Town. He seems to have a lot of ideas. But 12 is the most recent number we've got. He was thinking about doing them in chunks of 3, so perhaps he could do another 3 stories relatively swiftly. The 3 before Egg becomes a serious contender for the Iron Throne. During this period, the backdrop is there were lots of Targaryens, but then they all started dying, one after another. For about a quarter of a century, the Targaryens died at a rate of about 1 a year. Now, we can go to conspiracy theories about why this is. When in doubt, blame Bloodraven, but there's something going on. And all of that ultimately led to a situation where there weren't many Targaryens left, and they had to choose who was going to be king, and that's when Egg got chosen. Let's have a quick flick through. Sebastian Holden saying Duncan is Sir Lucan Strong. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from that. Cheryl Baxter saying, hi, Robert. In the morning, it's 8:07 a.m. in Sydney. Well, hello to you and good morning. And Richard Tabor saying, catching up at 1.5. So I'm talking very quickly there. Levac saying, I'm unreasonably excited for the puppet show. They went the team-operated route for the dragon, and it looks damn good. Reminds me of the Warhorse play. Yeah, so one of the highlights for me of the trailer was the puppet show. So in the novella, we have a tourney. Around the outside of the tourney, we get to see the life of what's going on here. We get to see the blacksmiths, we get to see the farriers, we get to see the people who are the support acts to the main actors within the tourney itself. And Dunk goes to this puppet show, and it sounds pretty amazing. And the sort of love interest there is this woman called Tansel. Tansel, too tall, they called her. Not too tall for me, says Sir Duncan. But she is there as part of this this troupe of puppeteers. And if you go and have a look at the trailer, then you see a bit of this. And in my mind, when I was reading the book, then yeah, these are just like marionette type puppets. But the way that they've got this there on the show, it would appear, is not life size, but huge dragon, handled by a number of different people. Which, yeah, I think Warhorse. If you ever saw Warhorse, the stage play, you get this horse who is sort of handled by a team of, I don't know, 4 different people, one of them with the head, then with the legs, and they're all managing. It's a spectacular creation for the stage. And yeah, that looks good. It was a bit like that. Quinn the GM, Shelley J says, Quinn the GM had some news about POV from the con. Do please share. I'd be interested to hear that, whether or not it does slip from Dunk. So in the story, it basically is Dunk, but it would be interesting to know whether it does shift in the TV show to other things. Ray Blackfire saying, who here has listened to the audiobooks read by Harry Lloyd? Yeah, I would say I've said this many times before. For my money, the audiobook the audiobooks of Dunk and Egg read by Harry Lloyd, some of the best matching of voice actor to story I can remember ever. I think he's absolutely fantastic. For those who do not know, he played Viserys in season 1 of Game of Thrones. That's the guy. You can imagine him. And he does the audio narration for Dunk and Egg, and I think he's fantastic. Quick flick through. Richard Tabor saying wasn't a fan of the audiobook. I know some people who aren't a fan of the audiobook, to be fair, but I personally love it. And clicking through. Project Mathesar saying King Diran II has 4 sons and 7 grandsons by the time the story begins. Yeah, so when Egg inherits the throne, he is Aegon V, but he's also known as Aegon the Unlikely because nobody expected him to inherit. Lots of Targaryens died. David McConnell Buha saying, finally caught a live stream. Hello from Alaska. Hi, great to see you. And agree. Weirwood saying they need to step up production before Egg grows up too much. Yeah, so them sort of soft renewing seasons 2 and 3, I think, means that they will get those stories done while the Egg actor is still quite young and small. And Northern Tommy saying, I honestly hated the Game of Thrones theme being used for House of the Dragon, especially after Game of Thrones imploded so hard. Yeah, I mean, I would have personally, I'd have liked to have a new theme tune, but that might just be me and you by the sound of it. And let's go to Weirwood Net member, thank you very much, saying thick as a castle wall. Yeah, this is one of the wonderful things about Dunk is the way that he's not got this high view of himself. In fact, if anything, you would just want to shake him and say, no, you're amazing. Stop being so down on yourself. Angelos Lukatos, a new member, welcome, lovely to see you. For those who do wish to support this channel, the best way is still Patreon, which is why I try and frame these live streams around questions from my patrons. But if for whatever reason you don't wish to go to Patreon, then you can be a channel member here, and I hugely appreciate that too. So thank you very much. Michelle Ramos said, oh, excellent. Yes, you were there at the panel. George R. R. Martin said that he originally wrote The Mystery Knight from Dunk and Egg's perspectives, but decided he didn't like it and went back to just Dunk. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so The Mystery Knight is the 3rd in the series. So he said that he originally tried to write that from Egg's perspective as well. Interesting. Okay, because the stories are just Dunk, which personally I think adds to the charm of them because we get him to see the world through his eyes, and it means that because he's not the most analytical, observant of people, he often misses a lot, and it allows us to get this extra layer of what's going on behind what he sees. We can interpret stuff that perhaps he doesn't really understand what's going on. Right, have we got any more comments? Let's have a quick flick through. Okay, let's go with some questions from my patrons. So Michelle Ramo, I've already picked up on you. You've said that you'll actually be there. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Ghost Dog saying, with it being generally accepted that Hodor is a descendant of Dunk due to Bran's vision in Bloodraven's Cave, do you think Hold the Door might help inform Dunk's role in saving lives at Summerhall, perhaps holding a door open, allowing others to escape? Yes, so um, this is one of the things that we have as a kind of a hangover from these stories, that they aren't just, although they are completely standalone in many ways, you don't have to have read or understood anything about A Song of Ice and Fire in order to appreciate these stories. There are lots of kind of links across to the main story, increasingly so, actually, it has to be said, the further into the series you get. One of the things we have some clarification from George R. R. Martin on is the fact that Dunk has descendants who feature in the main story of A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, the one that he's confirmed absolutely is Brienne. Brienne is, I don't know, granddaughter, great-granddaughter of Dunk. And we should probably just be open about this. He's not married into their family. He was an unmarried knight who then became a member of the Kingsguard and therefore couldn't marry. So when we're talking about descendants, then they will be illegitimate children. So we have Brienne, but another fan favourite, and I personally agree with this 100%, is that Hodor may well be a descendant of Dunk. Now, why do we think that? Partly because he's tall, very strong, but in Bran's last chapter that we have from him in A Dance with Dragons, he gets these series of visions through the Winterfell weirwood tree. And one of those, he's going back through time, and one of those is of a very tall knight and a woman who is reaching up to kiss him. Now, the fan theory is that that is Old Nan when she was younger, and that the very tall knight is Dunk. The timing kind of fits in terms of what we're looking at. Bran seems to be going back through time through each of these different snippets of visions that he's getting, so the timing seems to fit. And we're told that Hodor is Old Nan's probably grandson. So somewhere, given that she seems not excessively tall, probably quite short, somewhere in that line, there are some tall genes, let's put it that way. So the working assumption is that Hodor is a descendant of Dunk. And then we get this fan theory. I call it a fan theory. I really like this, which is this idea that at Summerhall, we know that he did something heroic. George R. R. Martin, and this is where he died, as well as Egg died. George R. R. Martin has kind of teased us with this. He's given us the only account that we have is in the World of Ice and Fire, and it's an account from the Maester who was there. And he wrote something, but then he spilt the ink over it, and so we only have a few different words. So we'll never know exactly what. It's the most blatant, and I know George R. R. Martin himself will, I'm sure, acknowledge this is the most blatant example of him not wanting to spoil what happens in later bits of the story. But one of the things we do have is a line which says, but for the heroism of Sir Duncan or of the Lord Commander, ... which basically says that Dunk was heroic, and but for what he did, the implication is lots more people would have died. So what might he have done to heroically save people's lives? My very basic first guess would be there's a huge fire going on. He held open a door so that people could get out. And he stayed there and he sacrificed his life so that others could get out. That seems to fit both what we read and also what we know of his character. And also, it fits with Hodor, who is holding the door. And we get Dunk holding the door, sacrificing himself in order to save many people's lives. So the echo is there. And we also get this, it's a slightly weird thing that Dunk thinks about a lot, but it must have a narrative payoff. George R. R. Martin has set this up in order for us to have some kind of narrative payoff, and that is Dunk's foot. And the context, and this will happen in season 1 of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, it happened in Hedge Knight, is that he, in order to save the Tansel, who was being assaulted by Aerion Targaryen, one of the bad guys in this story, Dunk comes in and he physically defends, attacks in a way Aerion Targaryen. And he does that by sort of punching him and kicking him. And Aerion is there saying, well, you know what the rules are. If you strike a Targaryen, then you have to lose that part of your body. And so Dunk's there going, I should have lost my foot. He doesn't. We then get the Trial of the Seven, etc., etc. And in the Trial of the Seven, again, spoilers, but in the Trial of the Seven, Baelor Breakspear, the heir to the Iron Throne himself, dies. But Dunk gets vindicated. He's freed. And we read this. Sometimes I sit under that tree there and look at my feet and ask if I couldn't have spared one. How could my foot be worth a prince's life? He's thinking that he could have, the whole thing could have been finished by him having his foot chopped off. But actually, they went down the Trial of the Seven route, and as a result, then a prince of the realm died. And so Dunk's thinking, it's his foot or the prince of the realm. How does that work? And then he goes on to think, mightn't it be that some morrow will come when I'll have need of that foot, when the realm will need that foot, even more than a prince's life? And he thinks this not just once, but 2 or 3 times. And it does make you wonder whether that foot will have a purpose that will equalize in some way or outweigh the loss of a prince's life. Might he hold open the door with his foot? It's a working theory. We don't have evidence yet, but all the bits just kind of fit. So I like it. I think that really works for me, and I think we're going to see how that might work. Hopefully, if we get there with the stories. Let's have a look at the chat. Stephanie Lash saying, "Hi Robert, bit off topic. Prophecy is problematic in Game of Thrones, but what do you think is the original source of Rhaegar's belief in the 3 heads of the dragon and the prince that was promised? Text, live prophecy, and from whom?" Well, I will answer this actually in a way that is not off topic, because we know the prince that was promised prophecy, that, as far as we're aware, doesn't talk about the dragon must have 3 heads or anything along those lines. That was given again. The prince that was promised prophecy was given again by the the person who later becomes known, she was the Woods Witch at the time, but she becomes known as the Ghost of High Heart later, as to who the prince that was promised would be. So that will be fresh in his mind. He also, we know, read some things that persuaded him that he was going to be the prince that was promised, or was the prince that was promised. But to connect it to what we're talking about this time, it's probably worth saying that this period, although we look at it and say, well, there aren't any dragons here, it's not particularly magical, this is possibly the most magical period of Targaryen history that we know about. Maester Aemon says that all three of his siblings had dragon dreams, and that killed them. So all of them, Egg did, Diren did, Aerion did. They all had dragon dreams. So we know that Aemon himself did. So we've got 4 people in one generation who have dragon dreams. Bloodraven is around at this time, hugely magical. Shira Seastar is around at this time, hugely magical. We get Aerys the First, who spends his time researching the higher mysteries. There is a huge focus, although it does not come across because Dunk isn't magical. We're not here in the worlds of the 1% most of the time. He's just there amongst the small folk. We don't see what's going on behind the scenes. But in the halls of the mighty, with the Targaryens, this is a very magical time. And they will have rediscovered, almost certainly, I suspect, all of the prophecies that we had originally through Aegon, and there was an active attempt to see how and when and in what way they might be fulfilled. So, where did his belief in the prince that was promised come from? Well, I suspect it was handed down to him. But also he read something, we're told, that made him believe it was about him. The 3 heads of the dragon, probably again in some kind of prophecy. Sardoob saying, hi from Australia, g'day to you. Do you think the show will be like the Game of Thrones and go past the books? Will it be where we see Summerhall? I think, well, they've only commissioned the 3, which is the 3 that we've got. I personally, my instinct is that they're not going to go beyond what we've got written. I think they've learned that lesson. I can't guarantee that. I've got no inside line on this at all. I think that George R. R. Martin, the factors here, George R. R. Martin does not want them to overtake the stories, and he finds the Dunk and Egg stories a lot easier to write than A Song of Ice and Fire. It would not surprise me, as much as he said my priority is the Winds of Winter, etc., it would not surprise me if they get to the end of those 3 seasons and he's still nowhere near finishing the Winds of Winter, that he quickly writes a couple of Dunk and Egg stories. One of them's already half written, The She-Wolves of Winterfell. Another one, he's already plotted out, The Village Hero. So it wouldn't take huge amounts of time for him to write them. And they're not like The Winds of Winter. Every chapter of The Winds of Winter, he's got a cross-reference with everything else. Who are the other characters coming in? What do these people think about what those people were thinking about? How is this event impacted by the other things that were going? He doesn't need to worry about any of that with this. He can just think about things from Dunk's perspective. He can just think about, and that's a very small perspective with due respect to Dunk. He's not thinking about the wider implications of things. If we get the Winterfell story, it's just about what's going on at Winterfell. He's not caring about prophecy. We're not going to get the layers of foreshadowing that we get. There is some foreshadowing in the Dunk and Egg stories. There are definitely layers going on there, but not to the same extent as the main story. So I think the first thing I would say is that I don't think George R. R. Martin wants them to overtake, and I think that he could relatively swiftly create some more stories. And the second thing is I don't think that HBO will want to. I think that they have learned their lesson, and I think that they if if this isn't if it's not, I'm sure it will be. If it's not a massive success, then that's an easy way for them to just sort of pause it and say, okay, we've not got any more stories to tell, and then go on to other things. If it is a massive success, then they could still pause it, but then do other Game of Thrones things, because that means that they can then think, well, hang on a moment, Game of Thrones was the biggest thing we ever did. House of the Dragon is, you might not think this, but if you look at the viewing figures, still one of the biggest things that HBO have ever done. And if Duncan Egg, Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is anywhere near that, then the conclusion they will have to reach is people want more, and so they could happily move on to other stuff. James Townley, are there any mentions of Sir Duncan the Tall in the White Book of the Kingsguard that Jamie reads? Love your videos and thanks for everything you do. Yes, there is. In fact, there comes a time when Jamie reads that section, and I think Joffrey's there. Off the top of my head, I think this is a book thing rather than a TV show thing. I think it's like, oh, there's 4 pages here. He must have been amazing. And I think Jamie says something like, yeah, so the legends say. So yes, there is. He has his section in there, definitely. Actually, why don't we see whether we can do that? Doing live research, I do this every now and then. Live research. Let's see whether we can find the section here in A Song of Ice and Fire. I might not be able to, but let's see whether we can. Now we've got some Barristan's one. We got a reference there. No, I can't find it. Anyway, not to worry. That would have been good if I could. But yeah, he definitely gets a mention. All of the Kingsguard get to their section in the White Book. Let's go to Yeldenil saying, hi, Robert, hope you're doing well. In these times, your videos mean the world to me as they give me a great escape from everything wrong with the world today. Well, thank you. I hugely appreciate that. That means a lot to me. That's one of the things that keeps me going, is this idea that perhaps this can be an outlet for people somewhere where it's safe. We can just talk about the things we enjoy. We can leave the outside world outside. For today's topic, if you haven't already, can you tell us what the going theories are about Dunk's ancestry? And if the symbols he picks to paint on his shield are as random as he thinks, or hold clues about his identity and destiny? Yeah, so if you go around the fandom, you'll find lots of theories about Dunk's descendants, who might be his descendants. Not so much about who his ancestors might be. Now, this is curious because he doesn't know, and he is inquisitive about it, which is the kind of thing that when we get a character like, say, Jon Snow in the main story, he's inquisitive about who his mother might be. That's a hint that we're going to find something out. Here we get Dunk. He is inquisitive about who his father might be. I'll read the thing we get here. Which is him saying, I never knew my mother, or what became of her. Maybe I was born too big and killed her. Most like she was some whore or tavern girl. You don't find high-born ladies down in Flea Bottom. And if she ever wed my father, well, what became of him then? Dunk did not like to be reminded of his life before Sir Arlen found him. There was a pot shop in King's Landing where I used to sell them rats and cats and pigeons for the brown. The cook always claimed my father was some thief or cutpurse. Most like I saw him hanged, he used to tell me, but maybe they just sent him to the wall. When I was squiring for Arlen, I would ask him if I couldn't go up that way sometime to take service at Winterfell or some other northern castle. I had this notion that if I could only reach the wall, that I might have come on some old man, a real tall man, who looked like me. We never went, though. So this is actually set up as a bit of a mystery. We don't talk about it much, but it is set up as a mystery. Who might his father be? In particular, I mean, his mother is there. He's inquisitive, but he kind of dismisses that. He does wonder who his father is. And this plays on through the stories. You will find that, particularly in the second and third stories, there Dunk is going, yeah, let's go to the wall. We're heading north because we're going there. And it seems to be this idea that he just thinks, well, maybe my father's up there somewhere. Maybe if he was this thief, they sent him to the wall. And that does seem to be him kind of clinging on to this idea that maybe his father, if he had been this kind of thief or whoever had been killed, maybe they just sent him up to the wall. So that is what is driving the meta narrative at the moment, is him trying to find out who his father is. So we should be also perhaps wondering who his father is. You mention the sigil that he comes up with. So Sir Arlen, when Dunk arrives at the tourney in the Hedge Knight, he has Sir Arlen's shield with Sir Arlen's sigil on it, and he's told that he can't have that. He's not a member of Sir Arlen's family, so he's not allowed to do that. So he has to come up with his own sigil, and he has to do this in a bit of a rush. He gets Hainzl to paint one onto his shield for him. And what he chooses is this shooting star over an elm tree at twilight, at sunset. And the reason why is because he's thinking about, it might even have been the night before, he was there lying up under an elm tree. He looked up, there's a shooting star. He's like, oh, it's good luck. And so he went with that. Typical Dunk, not really thinking through things. It's just like, oh, well, that's good. That's nice. That means something. I'll do that. The question is, does this mean something? Well, it's kind of hard to say at this stage because we haven't seen it all, but a shooting star does kind of imply magic from above in some way. We've got this a few different times. We've got the red comet that appears towards the end of Game of Thrones, but one beginning of Clash of Kings, very important, signifying the return of magic in many ways to the world. And we also get another one just before Aegon. Fagon or whoever you might want to call him, when Rhaegar's son Aegon was born, there was a comet. We get another one, this shooting star, which landed. House Dane followed. There are magical overtones to this, which probably he didn't. He was just thinking, "Oh, is that good luck?" And that's probably the extent to it. So. Might that mean something? I don't think we've got the clues yet. What I will say, and I think it's probably it's sort of answering a question you didn't ask, but I will go down this route because at some point I will have to say this. Dunk is not a magical character. He seems almost ostentatiously not magical. He just kind of wanders around. He doesn't really think about magic. If there's magic, is out there somewhere. It's nothing to do with him. He's just got this very straightforward approach to life. And yet, wherever he goes, these hugely important events just seem to swirl around him. He turns up at this tourney, and because of him, the heir to the throne dies. That you might say, wow, that's just like a one-off. But he happens to be in the one part of the country when the Great Spring Sickness happens, which kills lots of people. He happens to be in the part of the country where he's safe. He turns up to another random tourney, just stumbles into it. Turns out that they're plotting the Blackfire Rebellion, the third Blackfire Rebellion there. That's in book 3. Wherever he is, things seem to be happening. And Bloodraven will come onto him in a moment, just kind of every now and then, just kind of gives him these looks. And it's like, something going on here. He doesn't seem to be magical, but magic seems to kind of, or fate, or whatever you want to call it, seems to kind of swirl around him. The closest I get to understand this is if you know the Wheel of Time, then you get this Tarveran kind of idea um, of somebody who, by their presence, they are. Well, in that world, it's like the tapestry of life is kind of written and we're all woven into the tapestry. Some people get to weave it themselves, and Dunk seems to be that person. So it's almost as if fate is swirling around him wherever he goes. Um, which was a little bit of a digression away from what's his ancestry. But it makes me kind of wonder, is he just a nobody? It seems as in, did he just, his parents, no one special? Did he just grow up in King's Landing and that's it? It feels weird. We're not told the story, but it feels weird that even a knight as unglamorous as Sir Arlen should randomly pick a boy from King's Landing, from the slums of King's Landing, and say, "You can be my squire." There's a story there that we don't know. There's some reason why he did that we simply do not understand yet. And um, Dunk is perhaps right. It is a bit weird, even in the kind of the slums of King's Landing, that nobody knows who his mother or his father are. Is his father? Is it possible that his father, say, was some kind of famous person? It's very possible. It's possible that his mother was and just abandoned the child. Again, it's very possible. So I think there's it's Yeldenil, you're sort of you're asking, I think, the exactly right question, but I think we've not got the answer yet. I think George R. R. Martin has told us enough to make us go, there's something here. There's something that we've not got the clues yet for. And I do wonder whether at some point in the next few stories we'll get another couple of clues that suggest there's something. I don't want him to be a secret Targaryen. He doesn't come across as a Targaryen. I don't want him to be secretly magical, but I do like the idea that there is a history there because it's been prepped for us. This idea that he's searching for his father. Roman Lakovets, do we know why George R. R. Martin decided to shelve the She-Wolves of Winterfell? As I understand it, it was mostly finished. Yeah, so this was what was then going to be the fourth short story. He's since then, I should probably clarify, he has kind of hinted that the Village Hero would be the next one that comes out rather than the She-Wolves of Winterfell. And the other clarification probably is that the She-Wolves of Winterfell is just a working title. We've had this out in the fandom for so long, we now use this as if it is the title. It's not. The naming convention of these stories is this is who Dunk is at that particular moment in time. The Hedge Knight, the Sworn Sword, the Village Hero, the King's Guard. That's the kind of thing as a naming convention. Which means that the She-Wolves of Winterfell is not going to be the title of it. There will be a different one. Why the reason why we're told is that he wanted to focus in on the Winds of Winter, which is fine. The implication was that he got about halfway. He was commissioned to do this. For those who don't know, the first three all appeared initially. They appeared in anthologies, not just his own stuff. They were anthologies of a number of different fantasy writers. In fact, actually, if you entirely random recommendation, but the first two they were called Legends and Legends 2, and this was edited by, I think, Gardner Dozois, if that's how you pronounce his name, who was the preeminent sci-fi and fantasy editor of his age, and they are excellent collections of short stories and novellas from the finest fantasy writers of their time. And if you ever manage to get your hands on one of them, then do. They're absolutely fantastic. They, off the top of my head, I think Stephen King's in there. I think Raymond D. Feist is in there. I can't remember who else, but they're really good collections of stories from different writers. But so these were not written as George R. R. Martin. He wasn't as big a writer at the time, but these were not written as sort of standalone stories that he would publish. They were just like because he got commissioned to write a story. And The She-Wolves of Winterfell was commissioned for an anthology about dangerous women, I think it was called. That I think he then eventually ended up putting the Princess and the Queen, which was like the build up to the Dance of the Dragons. But for whatever reason, he kind of ran out of time, ran out of inspiration to be writing The She-Wolves of Winterfell, shelved it, decided actually he really should be writing. Don't quote me on the Dangerous Woman thing. It might have been a different one. But he decided he wanted to be focusing on writing The Winds of Winter, and so he paused that. I mean, reading between the lines, it was a little bit of writer's block. He had an idea, but he didn't really know how to finish it off. And the fact that he's since then suggested that we're going to have another, he's going to be able to finish another story before he finishes that story, does seem to suggest that he finds the other story easier to write. But overall, I should probably say what this means is, yes, you're right. We've got a half-finished story, and we've also got a fully mapped-out story. If he decides he wants to write one or two more Dunk and Egg stories, he could do them relatively swiftly, I think. Lady Vaughan-Strauss. Hello, I hope your kingdom fares well. It does, thank you very much. I don't know the Dunk and Egg stories well, but based on the preview and the IMDb page, there seems to be virtually no women in this story, apart from a single episode with Tansel. Do you know, are there any prominent women in this story? Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'll happily tell you what's in the three novellas. This is all from Dunk's POV, so we're having Dunk's story, and the other main character is X. So this is two male characters, definitely. However, and also it's probably worth saying that yes, they do. Because they're dealing with two of the stories have been dealing with tourneys, that has been quite male centric. Now, that's not to say that there aren't any prominent females. It will be interesting to see how prominent Tansel is in this season of the TV show. In books, then she's important, but important in as much as the way that Dunk reacts to it. It's his reactions to her rather than her character, which is the most important thing. However, when we get onto story 2, the Swan Sword, Lady Rohan Weber is one of the principal characters, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but when you start reading behind the story as to not just what Dunk sees, it does appear that she's probably the person who's pulling the strings most of the way through this story. So that is definitely a very sort of strong female character. The third one, the Mystery Knight, I mean, I think you'd be hard-pressed to say there are many significant female characters in that one at all. All that said, I think what we could do is look forward to say probably there will be more as these stories progress. We've had Tansel Too Tall, we've had Rohan Weber. The She-Wolves of Winterfell is about women in Winterfell. There's a succession crisis, and the main characters who are there, if you go back and look at the Stark history at the time, lots of men die, and we've got a lot of different women who are there sort of jockeying for position, and so Dunk and Egg will be arriving in the middle of that, and hopefully working their way to some kind of diplomatic solution there. Egg will at some point soon be meeting Betha Blackwood, who he will marry. Perhaps he will meet her first. He's still very young, but perhaps he will meet her first in The Village Hero. And then as we go on through this story, almost certainly Rohan Weber will make a return. She rather cryptically, we read in The World of Ice and Fire that she mysteriously disappears. She marries into the Lannister family, and then she mysteriously disappears a bit later, almost certainly connected to Dunk. And then we get other characters. Elena Tyrell, a young Queen of Thorns, appears on the scene as well at some point, as does Jenny of Oldstone, and the Woods Witch. So the female characters do come in, but this is a story told from Dunk's perspective. Wolfdan the Wanderer, not related, but I missed last week. Could Melisandre glamour someone to look as if they have grayscale to justify Shireen's burning, convincing the wildlings? I mean, yes, I think is the short answer to that. She can glamour one human to look like another human, which seems to imply that she would be able to make somebody look as if they had grayscale. Shireen does have grayscale, though. So it's stopped, whatever you call it, expanding. The growth and progression of grayscale was stopped in her when she was very young. But if you go to some of the wildlings, they say that she should be killed now. Doesn't matter. That it never actually ends. Grayscale, it might lay dormant for a time, but it's never gone away, and you can't stop it. So there is no, in order to get the wildlings on side, there is no need for Melisandre to make Shireen's grayscale look even worse. Commander Ray saying, hello, Robert and Dan. My question is, with House of the Dragon being made to profit off of and tie into the larger story of Game of Thrones, how do you think they'll do it for this show? Because they most certainly will do something, even if not at first. I'm thinking more Bloodraven earlier than he's included in the books, and The Prince That Was Promised references and inclusions, especially with the Jon and Egg parallels being secret princes. Also, as a secondary question, how do you think they will expand on or focus the show around Dunk and Egg? Additional POVs or keep it simple? Well, I'll answer the second bit first. I don't know, but from what we've seen in the trailer, it does seem to be very focused in on Dunk's perspective, which I like. And I hope that they do that, because the charm of the books is not just that these are great characters, it's the fact that we only see this through Dunk's perspective. We're not learning other things from elsewhere. We're understanding what Dunk is doing because we see what he sees and we feel what he feels. And sometimes we as readers get to feel a little bit clever because we can see a little bit extra of what's going on that perhaps he doesn't. So I hope that they don't mess around with that. Clearly, this is a different medium. Things will work slightly differently. I understand all of that, but I think if they want to retain the charm, it has to stay from their perspective. If we suddenly shift up to, and now here's what the Targaryens are doing and thinking, that I think will make the whole thing feel a little bit different. On the bigger point, though, about how are they going to tie this into the wider story, I'm tempted to say that I hope they don't again. Another one of the wonders of Dunk and Egg as stories is that you don't need to know the bigger picture. You don't need to know all of the other stuff that's going on. There are things that will reward you if you do, but you don't need that. You're not with House of the Dragon. It seemed like they felt, and I think this is probably where you're coming from. It seemed like they felt that they had to tie this into Game of Thrones. They had to start by saying 200 years before Daenerys, da 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 da. And it's like, oh, okay, so they're wanting the casual viewer to make the link through to what they know in Game of Thrones. Here, I think anyone who's watching it will go and go, oh yeah, so this is a spin-off of Game of Thrones. And I think the only bits of context that they need to know is there's no dragons in this one, and this is between House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. And that's kind of it. I personally think, as a starting point for people, I don't think they need to know all these other stuff, all this other stuff. So, what might they do though? What they might do is that something that there is a lot of in these stories is prophecy, dragon dreams. We will see Deer and the Drunkard. If we get to season 3, we will get to see John the Fiddler, aka Daemon the Second Blackfire, both of whom have a lot of these dreams and visions, and those they can and should tie into the wider story about what's going on. As for Bloodraven, I mean, I love Bloodraven. I instinctively would rather he just slowly gets introduced. He's not in the first story. He's not mentioned in the first story. I wouldn't hate it if they give him a couple of mentions so people are aware of this figure somewhere lurking in the background, and then the second one he gets a few more mentions, and then the third one, then he eventually appears. That kind of works for me. If they brought him in here, that would be changing the story, because he's not a character who just sort of sits there and does nothing. Even if you think he's not doing anything, he definitely is doing something in the background. So I kind of hope that they don't introduce him. So Tony Sled, Melisandre could put it on corpses. This is grayscale, suggesting a false spread or fear. Yeah, so the working hypothesis among a number of fans is that perhaps we might get Patchface getting some grayscale, a patch on his face, perhaps. But she sees him and she sees death, and part of that might be his background and history, but might it also be that because he hangs around a huge amount with Shireen, might he be the first person to catch her from her? It's entirely possible. Let's go to Nicole Stewart saying, hi, Robert, love your content. Thank you. My question is regarding where else in the story you think Dunk and Egg will travel to. There is a possible story in Winterfell, for the she-wolves are there, and we know the story ends in Summerhall. I would imagine there would have to be a couple of storylines in King's Landing, or possibly Dragonstone. But, pardon me, but where else would the story take us? Well, let's do the bits that we know that he's told us. Yes, you're right. We've got She-Wolves of Winterfell, takes to Winterfell. It wouldn't surprise me if they go to the Wall, because they talk about the Wall a lot. The village hero seems to be in the Riverlands. George R. R. Martin has said in a blog post, I don't know, at some point in the last year, that we really should. They were in Dawn, so maybe we should go back and do a story from Dawn. It wouldn't surprise me if they do something in Old Town. We know they went to Old Town to see Maester Aemon there. You're right, it does. The story does end in Summerhall. There's also the Great Council at Harrenhal. So we've got lots of different options, but and it really does depend on what how many stories George R. R. Martin wants to write. If his original idea was to do 6, which he clearly is going to expand out beyond, you definitely have to have one of Summerhall. I can't imagine you could have the story without them. How Egg becomes king. So you've got Summerhall, you've got Harrenhal. There has to be at least one in King's Landing, surely. So if you've got those things, then where else do you send them? Well, the answer from George R. R. Martin himself is here. At the end of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is a compilation of the 3 stories. They were all brought together, published in one volume. At the end of which he writes this, just as a kind of little postscript. He says, "More travels and more travails await our hedge knight and his squire in the years to come. From dawn to the wall, their journeys will carry them across the length and breadth of the 7 kingdoms, and even beyond the narrow sea, to the disputed lands and the shining cities of Essos. Along the way they will cross paths with lords and knights and sorcerers, and many a fair maid and noble lady, to write their names into the annals of Westeros, never to be forgotten." So in terms of where, the dawn, we already figured. The wall, yeah. The length and breadth of the 7 kingdoms seems to imply, there'll be something towards the west or the east. Are they going to go to the Vale of Arryn? Are they going to go to the Westerlands? Are they going to go to the Iron Islands? That's certainly possible. But the bit which perhaps catches us most by surprise is this mention of the disputed lands. Why on earth would they be going to the disputed lands? And the shining cities of Essos. Are they going to spend some time out as Dunk as a sellsword? That would be something. That's pure speculation. But if they're going over to Essos, not just for dealing with sort of the Blackfire, whichever one it was, the 4th Blackfire rebellion, then we're not just dealing with that, then why are they going there? Presumably before he was king, but if so, this is a knight and his squire. It's interesting. We don't know the answers, but in terms of where that is, it feels to me, in all honesty, George R. R. Martin's got more ideas than he's got time to write them all down. He clearly loves these characters, and he's clearly got lots of vague ideas about where they might go, but he's just not got the time to put it all down. CH0816. Is there a possibility that Jenny and Duncan, this is Jenny of Oldstones and Duncan Targaryen, who is Egg's eldest son, named after our Duncan, is there any chance that they had children? I think this idea is cool, particularly as a possible ancestry for Fagon or even Varys. We're not told it, and I think we would have been, is the short answer. So, for those who are slightly fuzzy on the historical details here, so Egg, when he gets older, he has 4 children, and his idea is that he's not a big fan of this whole Targaryen intermarriage thing, and the Targaryens are not as strong as they used to be in the olden days. Their power has waned a little bit, and so his plan is, he's going to marry his children off to some powerful families, and that's how the Targaryens are going to retain their power. His eldest son, he gets engaged to the daughter of Lionel Baratheon. The Baratheons, very strong, powerful house. Duncan Targaryen breaks that in order to marry Jenny of Oldstones. Now, there's a whole history going on there, so we'll not worry too much about all of the stuff surrounding that, but the key point is that he marries this woman, and as a result of that, he has to absent himself from the line of succession. This is the kind of the deal. Lionel Baratheon is so annoyed. He thought that he was going to have his grandchild sit on the Iron Throne, and now not. So he's annoyed. Dunk has to go over there, fight him. There's a whole story which almost certainly will be one of the Dunk and Egg stories. But outcome is Egg's oldest son absents himself from the line of succession. And he dies at some hall as well. Might they have had children? I think it seems unlikely that they could have had children and it not been noted in the World of Ice and Fire, because that child would have been a possible contender for the Iron Throne. Now, you might be saying, but they were outside of the line of succession. That has never bothered. If you're people who are wanting to champion somebody for the Iron Throne, whether somebody might technically be outside of the line of succession doesn't make any difference. There were lots of people who were pushing for Maester Aemon to become king at one point, even though he'd disavowed everything, taken himself out of the line of succession by being a Maester. That didn't bother people all that much. You go and look at the Dance of the Dragons, random example. That people have different ideas on who the true ruler should be. So I think it goes beyond unlikely that we would have not been told if they had children, particularly if those children had survived. Hannibal the Dragon. What things do you think we see in this season of the Knight of Seven Kingdoms? What things do you hope we will see? And how are you doing? Well, I'm doing well. Thank you very much for asking. What will we see? Well, everything I've seen so far, everything I've heard so far, fingers crossed, we don't know the details, etc., etc. But all of that suggests that this is going to be quite a tight and clean adaptation of the book. Yes, they will add in flavor. I'm sure there'll be some characters who get a bit more screen time than they get on the in the actual story. I'm sure that some things which, like some of the fighting, for example, probably done and dusted in a couple of pages of the story, but on screen that might take 15 minutes or so. So there will be things that they expand, there'll be things that they contract, but as far as I can tell so far, this is going to be quite a faithful adaptation. What I'm really hoping is, out of the things that they might cut out, that they keep Deer and the Drunkard. He's there. He should appear just in episode 1, but I can very much imagine the discussion among the creatives and saying, okay, so episode 1, what we really need right now is we've set up Dunk. He's here. He's going to go to the tourney. He gets this squire in Egg, and that's episode 1. He arrives at the tourney. He's got his squire. If they had to cut something from that happens in the story that kind of slows the pace of that, it's Deer and the Drunkard. Is that he could be there and they could show him there. I think he does need to be there on screen, but they could easily kind of cut that back, not make that really kind of distracting bits of lots of visions and the like. So for those who don't know, Deer and the Drunken, he gets lots of these dragon dreams all the time, which is why he drinks. Is that he gets them when he's sleeping, and the only way that he can try and stop that is by getting so drunk that the dreams just don't affect him. He's quite a tragic character, it has to be said. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him. So that's a thing that I think is potentially in danger of not being there, but I hope is there. Diego Godoy saying, "Hola, Robert. Hola to you. Which part of the first Dunk and Egg story are you most excited about? Which character do you really hope they get spot on screen?" Well, I've waxed lyrical about Deer and the Drunken, so I will go for some others. The obvious ones are Dunk and Egg. Everything I've seen, they've got them right. The whole show hinges on those two characters being nailed on, and I think they've got that right. Beyond that, though, characters that I really hope they do. Aerion has to be the kind of Targaryen that we know, arrogant, dismissive of others, self-centered. But I hope that the kind of the hint that we get from Aemon that he is cursed in a way with dragon dreams also plays through in this as well. I hope that we get a hint of that. Now, again, from what I've seen, looks good. One character that I'm sure is nailed on is Lionel Baratheon. I think I said this earlier in the stream. I think the actor whose name I forget, somebody in the chat will be able to remind me. I've seen him in a variety of different things. I think he's really good. And from what I've taken, what George R. R. Martin has said, and from what I've just seen, the few moments that we get of him in that trailer, he looks perfect casting. So I'm very happy with that. Dominic Vaughan saying, "Hi, Robert. Hope you and Dan of House Dog are well. We are. Thanks for the lovely message last week on the pre-recorded stream on the wall regarding me getting married. Much appreciated." Well, I'm so happy for you. I'm glad you had a good day, and I'm delighted I could have played some small part in helping you get a little bit of rest the night before. Regarding Duncan Egg, aside from Summerhall, do you think we will get any plot details in the remaining novellas that will have a significant plot impact on the main stories, i.e., Bloodraven background or going to the wall, or any other magical lore things? And Madeline Tyrell Dane asks a similar question, saying, "I haven't read the Duncan Egg stories. Do they include many magical elements? What new things could be revealed about Westeros lore in the show?" So they're not magical on one level. Dunk is not a magical person. We're not seeing huge amounts of magic happening everywhere that he recognizes as being particularly magical. However, there are clearly lots of prophecies going on. There's one point where it appears to us, the reader, as if it's very clear that Bloodraven is doing a glamour. He's glamoured himself to look like someone else. So magic is going on there, but it's not the obvious magic. It's not the kind of dragons, ice zombies. It's not people sort of seeing things in the flames. That's not the headline type magic that we're seeing here. The magic on display here should be lower key. It should be the kind of thing that Dunk can almost ignore most of the time. As for the whether there's going to be much that will impact on the main story, yeah, there's a lot of things in the background that we will probably discover. I hope we discover a bit about, at least some hints about, why these Targaryens were dying so quickly at such a fast rate during this time. It's not just an accident here or there. There is something driving this. I think that we will get some answers on one or two key questions around Bloodraven, for example, him going to the wall. We're told, the historical record tells us that he was sent there by Egg on the Fifth, because he killed a Blackfire pretender who came across and was guaranteed safe conduct, and Bloodraven killed him anyway. And we're told that Egg, in order to show that he was in charge and that you can trust the king's name, he banished Bloodraven to the wall. A very popular fan theory is that Bloodraven was actually all right with that. It was time for him to go to the wall. He wanted to go to the wall. Maybe he even volunteered to go to the wall. And what is it with Maester Aemon? Attached to that, the story again that we read is that and this makes sense, story checks out, we don't need more on this one, but the story that we read is that he decided that given that he'd been offered the throne, he shouldn't hang around. He shouldn't be there for people to potentially rally behind. Even if he didn't want it, somebody would try and persuade him that he maybe would have been a better king. The story that we get from him is that he decided he wanted to go to the war, basically in order to protect Egg. But what if he gets dragon dreams? What if he also felt drawn to the wall at some point? It certainly seems very noticeable that two of these very magical Targaryens both went to the wall at the same time, Bloodraven and Maester Aemon. So was there some agreement? What was going on there? I think we will find out a little bit more about that. Obviously, Summerhall, we will find out what happened. And also we get lots of bits about Egg's early life and some things about what he did as king. What we don't really get is an expansion of this this idea that he had dragon dreams and those dreams killed him. We're left to go, okay, so he had dragon dreams of hatching dragon eggs, and so he decided he was going to do that, and then the experiment went wrong and everything burned down. That feels quite simplistic. He got some sorcerers from a shy, apparently. Who did he send there to get them? What about Shira Seastar? Well, we're talking about Bloodraven. She's around at this time. What's she up to? We will certainly get a lot more information about her. I think that she was sent over to a shy and much later appeared as Quaithe, but that's a completely different matter. Let's go to Sean Gartland saying, new patron here. Happy to support you in this endeavor, Robert. Well, thank you very much and welcome. Let's do a couple of quick thank yous, by the way. Patrons, already thanking you. You can't do this without your support, so thank you. Moderators, you are amazing. If you're here live in the chat, the reason why the chat is such a positive, uplifting place with so many informed and wonderful people, free from bots and nasty conversation, it's because the moderators do a fantastic job. So if you could just share a little bit of love with them, I would hugely appreciate that. One other thing which I'm always terrible at sort of remembering things to do, I had to scribble it down somewhere. I'm in the process of, if you've ever gone to indeepgeek.com, I do have indeepgeek.com, if you've ever been there and thought, oh, well, there's not much going on here, I agree, there wasn't much. I'm in the process of trying to re-up that to make that look a little bit shinier and nicer, with links across the merch and things like that. I've got some merch ideas as well that's going to be happening. But yeah, do go check it out. Not trying to sell you anything at the moment, but just go there if you're interested. There's links there to all of the other things I do, like The Well Told Tale, my audiobook channel, like In Deep Sleep. If you, as many people seem to, if you enjoy using me talking as a way to help you get to sleep, there's links across to that, links across to the main channel and various other things. So that's all there over on indeepgeek.com. That's probably all I need to say in terms of sort of notices now. But yes, welcome to Sean. Can't catch the stream, but we'll watch back later. Well, hello to you later. The show really does look amazing. HBO's redemption arc continues after the low point of Game of Thrones season 8, onwards and upwards. Yeah, absolutely. So I think there wasn't a question per se in there, but I'm very happy to spin off of this to just clarify. In my mind, this is it's quite an important moment in terms of what are we going to get in the future. House of the Dragon was hugely important. If that failed, then HBO wouldn't have been wanting to do other stuff. If this is a success, they will almost certainly be wanting to greenlight something else. I'm absolutely sure of it. They will be holding back and waiting to see what's going on here, because they know this is just 3 seasons. there's no guarantee they will get any more out of this. 6 episodes per season. That's not much for HBO. But if this works well, it shows that people don't just want something that looks and feels like Game of Thrones, by which I mean that House of the Dragon still has the Game of Thrones vibe. It's got the same theme tune, it's got dragons, and it's like Targaryens fighting each other, big wars going on, civil war. Dunk and Egg is a lot smaller scale. It's more whimsical, it's funnier. There aren't any big dragons going on. It's much more of a kind of a personal story. If that does well, then I could well imagine that the powers that be in HBO go, well, we can try something else a bit different then. We don't have to just try and do something that looks and feels like the original TV show. We can actually try things that spin out a little bit. And this is one of the things George R. Martin said ages ago, is that of the different projects that were being developed at the time, we've still got a whole raft of these things that are in that haven't been greenlit but are being developed. He said most of them were very different in tone. House of the Dragon was quite similar in tone to Game of Thrones. Dunk and Egg will be a difference in tone, but then this might free them up to do an anime. Maybe the UT anime that we've been hearing about for so long. Maybe they would go with that. That would be a very different tone as well. If they think people will just do something because it's set in the same universe, if people will watch it, they will love it. Scott Bittner saying, "Hello, Robert. Hope you and Dan the dog are doing well." Yeah, thank you. My question is, even when we get more Dunk and Egg stories, do you think Sabenis will ever show back up? Will Dunk ever make it a point to look for him? What do you think Dunk will do if he ever runs into him again? And will he hear him out and show mercy by giving him a chance to do the right thing, as far as the law is concerned? Or will he challenge him and drop him like a bag of sour leaf? Thank you so much for the stream. Have a wonderful night. Okay, so this is Sabenis, is a character in the second of the novellas, Swan Sword. Now he's got a bit of a background with Dunk. He is a hedge knight who knew Sir Arlen of Pennytree, who was Dunk's old knight master back in the day, and they went off as part of a sort of I think they were guarding somebody traveling across Dawn or something like that. But Dunk was there. Sir Arlen was mean to him when he was just a squire. They meet up again, though, when Dunk is a knight. And Sir Benifer is, again, not very nice. And he appears to spend half the time half drunk, and is just looking out for himself. He's almost the opposite of what a true knight should be. He's not there caring about the small folk. He's not there caring about defending those who aren't able to defend themselves, looking after truth or justice or anything like that. He's just after the cash, and wanting to stay out of trouble. Now, in the story, they're both hired by Sir Eustace, who has this border dispute going on. And as a part of this border dispute, Sir Benifer attacks a member of the small folk, and he sort of slashes him, and he cuts off his nose, ear, something along those lines. And long story short, he scarpers. He goes. He doesn't wait for justice. He just heads out of there. He's decided, that's it. I don't need this. I'm gone. And Dunk then, in order to try and reach some kind of level of justice, he even like cuts himself on the cheeks to show, okay, look, I will take the punishment for him. So he is a significant character. But the whole is Dunk minded to go looking for him? No, I don't think we don't get any indication. He thinks at the end of that story, he's there going, well, it'd be quite nice to go to the wall. And then when we get to the third story, they're sort of They're north of there. They're en route to the wall, and they're thinking, well, we just stopped off here, and they're going to carry on doing it. So they're not looking for him. That's not top of his list of things to do. He wants to do that. He's still thinking about looking for Tansel Tall, probably. He's probably thinking about Lady Rohan Weber more than he probably should do, as she's now a married woman again. So there's a lot of things on his mind, of things that he'd quite like to do. Sir Benefer's not anywhere near the top of that list. So I don't think he's going to proactively be hunting for him. He may run into him. And if so, yeah, he'll try and get him to do, try and get him to do the right thing. He will probably want him to go and apologise to Lady Rohan Weber. That's a very Dunk thing for him to do. Even if this is years later, I think he would probably say, no, you owe her at the very least an apology. Now, we've already mentioned in passing the fact that she disappears mysteriously later. I think it's about 19 years later. She marries again. So Eustace dies. She marries into the Lannisters. She has a few children there, and then just disappears. I do wonder whether everyone thinks that this is Dunk involved in some way. I do wonder whether or not the reason why Dunk gets back involved again is to do with Sir Benefer. It's just one of many reasons why they might get back in contact. Yeah, and it does make me wonder. Everyone says, well, where might she have gone? By this point, he's based in King's Landing. Might the two of them realize that they want to be together, but she can't be his wife and she was already married to someone? Maybe she just disappears and then reinvents herself and comes to King's Landing. Who knows? It's possible. Sir Steve saying, hello, good people. Just watched the trailer. Looks so good. I'm sure the show will be great. Surprised by how awesome the puppet dragon looked. The Dunk and Egg books are so beautifully written. Even though it has a simpler feel than the main story, it does so much to bring Westeros to life and build backstory to an epic tale. And the echoes that George R. R. Martin creates in this world. My pointless tinfoil theory is that Dunk is a descendant of Trystane Truefire. Both are tall, both wanted to be knights, and spoilers, I guess, both died tragically. Anyway, do you know if George R. R. Martin intends to write the Dunk and Egg stories as they age a bit? What age is Egg now, and when he becomes king? Just wondering if he wanted to write stories when Egg was king, possibly Summerhall. So, in answer to that last bit, yes, as we've said, he is. The idea is that he's going to write stories all the way through their life. So, yes, this would take them all the way up to Summerhall after he's king. In terms of ages, Egg is, helpfully for our calculations, born in the year 200. The first Dunk and Egg story, The Hedge Knight, happens in the year 209. And then third, I think, is in the year 212. So that's the age that Egg is, 9 and then 12. And in terms of the time span we've got after that, Summerhall is in the year 259. So Egg was 59 at the time. So yes, there's plenty of scope for lots of extra stories there. Just picking up on the puppet dragon, yes, this is pretty good. I think I mentioned this before, but it's big. I was expecting a small dragon, but yeah, this is really good. And then Trystane Truefire, he's a character who appears towards the end of the Dance of the Dragons, after Rhaenyra has disappeared, has gone, has left King's Landing. Then we get 3 pretenders who all claim rulership of King's Landing. One on basing themselves on each of the 3 big hills of King's Landing. The one who's based at the Red Keep is the one called Trystane Truefire. who is the champion of this guy called Sir Perkin the Flea. Now, Trystane Truefire, it is claimed, was the bastard son of Viserys Targaryen. He certainly looked Targaryen-y, and seemed to do some sensible thing. This is one of the fascinating things, is deliberate on George R. R. Martin's part, is that these pretenders who clearly had, that they were never going to actually end up ruling, some of them actually did a few things you go, that seems like a sensible policy. He did a couple of things that made sense. A couple of things didn't make a lot of sense, it has to be said. He would, also Perkin would basically be knighting people in return for their support, left, right, and centre, including people who were not knightly in the slightest. Anyway, Sir Trystane Truefire, he was held up as being the heir, but Sir Perkin the Flea eventually gave him up, and he was executed. It is a sad story. We're not told that he's hugely tall, but we're told that he was gangly, which seems to imply big in some way, long limbs at least. So, yeah, it's possible, but I think unlikely myself. So, friends saying, happy Thursday, Robert, and to you too. How many characters in the main story do you see being potentially related to Dunk? Might they not all be good characters like Brienne and Hodor? More than once in A Song of Ice and Fire, specific references are made to the largest known people in the land. The Umbers are potentially linked back to giants, so we could potentially rule those out. But how about the Cleganes? Best wishes, warmest regards. P.S. I've just upgraded my Patreon subscription, so thank you for the In Deep Sleep channel. With the sleep troubles caused by an 18-month-old at home, listening to reruns of your streams has been a huge help to me. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I hugely appreciate that. And yeah, if you want to upgrade Patreon, then feel free. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, who might be? Well, George R. R. Martin has basically confirmed Brienne. Hodor seems very, very likely. But then we're sort of casting around for other characters. The Umbers are very tall. Small John and Great John Umber is, I can't remember how tall they said he is, but he's like one of the 3 or 4 tallest characters in the whole series. But as you say, the legends there are that they're descended from giants, so we don't need to have someone like Sir Duncan coming in to inject a few tall DNA points in their favour. As for the Cleganes, I mean, there is certainly the tallest character that we have in the whole series is the Mountain, and Sandor is also very tall. Sandor the Hound also has, it's not complete by any stretch of the imagination, don't misquote me on this one, but he has some echoes of this same thing that Brienne has and that Sir Duncan has, which is this kind of true knight vibe. He's not a true knight. However, he retains this kind of image, which is, so Dunk, we're pretty sure, wasn't technically actually a knight. Brienne, not actually technically a knight. The Hound, member of the Kingsguard, but very much said, I am not a knight. He refused to be knighted. So there's an echo there. And then you say, okay, but does he defend the weak, the poor, and the defenseless? Well, of all the members of the Kingsguard, he's the one who seems to protect Sansa the most. And then he also protects Arya later on. Although he has done some horrific things, there are elements there of the true knight vibe going on. Does that mean that he's the descendant of Sir Duncan? No, not at all. It means that he's an echo of the sort of the trope that George R. R. Martin has created. I don't think it seems likely to me that those characters would be descendants of him. There is, however, one more character that I would hold up as being likely to be a descendant of Dunk, and that is someone called Small Paul, who we meet at the wall. And he is a member of the Night's Watch, and he matches a lot of the descriptors. He's very tall, he's very strong, the strongest member of the Night's Watch, we're told. He's not the cleverest. Uh, um, and he's also, there is one moment when he's teased as Small Paul, thick as a castle wall, which is what Dunk says about himself. Now, this is not an open and shut case. That phrase, thick as a castle wall, is used 3 or 4 times in the Song of Ice and Fire for various people, but it is noticeable that it is used here for Small Paul, who, if we got Small Paul and Sir Duncan the Tall, that just kind of mirrors. And we also get this clear idea that Dunk has, that he seems more fixated on this than he should be, given the fact that he seems to have no knowledge of this. The idea that maybe his father went to the wall. And if his father did go to the wall, we don't know exactly where Small Paul comes from, but maybe somewhere close to there. So that does leave open the option that maybe he is a descendant of Sir Dunk. Now, he is not a particularly nice character. He's not horrible. He seems quite simple in his own way, but he's also not the same kind of true knight that you might see exemplified by Brienne. William Schneider saying, "Hi, Robert. I always thought Dunk's knighthood was in question. Do you agree? Do you think the show will take any creative license and show if Dunk was or wasn't truly knighted?" Well, we've touched on this a few times, so let's deal with it here. The books do not say categorically one way or the other, but there are some very strong hints. Now, just to pull out 3, I did ages ago a video on this, so I think that one's come down, and I will put it back up again. But first of all, the opening scene, it looks like it's probably going to be the opening scene of the show as well, but the opening scene of the first story is Dunk, who is there burying Sir Arlen. His old knight master has died, and he's thinking to himself, well, what do I do now? I'm the squire to this guy. What jobs are there for squires? Well, maybe I could join the city watch. Maybe I could go off and join a mercenary company. He's thinking through these things. What job does a squire possibly have? And then he just suddenly stops and he thinks for a moment. And then we cut to the next scene, and he's there with all the knightly stuff and going off to attorney. And you're left to go, well, what happened? Surely he was not a knight when Sir Arlen had died. He was not thinking, oh no, I'm a knight, what do I do now? He was thinking, oh, I'm not a knight, what do I do now? And then he has an idea. So that's the clear setup for what this is. Then we get a few other clues, like him being a little bit vague about what actually happened when he was asked, so what did happen? And he's a little bit vague on it. We get a moment when he discovers Egg is actually he had a secret he was hiding. He was pretending not to be a Targaryen. He was a Targaryen. And Dunk thinks, yeah, well, I suppose we all have our big secrets, don't we? And the clear implication is that he's carrying around a secret as well. And then we also get a moment a little bit later in the story where Sir Rosamund Fossaway is there and wanting to fight on their side in the trial by combat, trial of the Seven. And it's decided he needs to be knighted. Someone needs to knight him. And now the rule was any knight can knight another person. So you have to be a knight in order to do this. And so they said, Dunk, come on, you're a knight. Knight this guy. And Dunk's like, well, maybe could someone else do it? And he's clearly not wanting to, which makes you wonder whether, when you add it to these other clues, is that because he knows that he's not a knight? and he's willing to take that lie on for himself, but he is fundamentally a good person and does not want to falsely knight somebody else, or he would feel bad about that. So that's the headline there. It's not Frostman, it was Raymond Fossaway. Sorry. What will they do with this on the show? I hope, and I think they will keep it vague as well. I think it's going to be one of those things that the audience should be able to read between the lines and say, so actually he's not really a knight. And I think that would translate quite well across to a new medium, across to the TV. So, is there a way they might do it? I mean, I think that as much as anything else, I would look at this and go, if this is being shown from Dunk's perspective, it would have to be quite forced. If they want to, they would have to create some conversation. We're not going to hear the inside of his brain. They will have a moment perhaps when he's there and he's sort of like digging the grave, and maybe he like talked to himself as that, what I do now, and then he like looks at the sword and he goes, maybe they will leave it like that, but I don't think that they would go as far as to have him say, I know what, I'm going to pretend to be a knight. I don't think they'll have him spell it out like that. So, yeah, they'll keep it a little bit of unclear, I think. LJ is saying, hi, Robert. The whole trailer gave me such big BBC's Merlin vibes in the best possible way. Is there a casting that you're particularly happy with or surprised by? Thanks to you and the mods. Well, thank you, and thank you, mods. Merlin, yeah, I see where you're coming from on that. If you've never watched Merlin, BBC, I don't know when this was now. It must be 10 years ago. BBC did a 4-5 series of Merlin, which was this very family-friendly kind of light fantasy show, very kind of character-driven, but that it was well acted. It looked good, and it was just fun, ultimately. And that, I think, if that's what you're trying to get at with this, is that, yeah, this looks fun. And I think that's the kind of the vibe that they're going with. It's not grimdark. This is uplifting stuff. So yes, in the best possible way, I understand where you're coming from on there. In terms of the casting that I'm happy with or surprised by, I've already talked a little bit about Lionel Baratheon. I would have liked to see more of Tansel Too Tall. I have to say, we only, I think, had one shot of her in there. I'd also liked to see a few more of the Targaryens. I understand why they didn't for this trailer. They're not trying to pitch this as a Targaryen-heavy thing. I'd have loved to see Daeron. I'd have loved to see Baelor. I'd love to see Maekar. We will see all of these characters, I know, but they were kind of holding them back a little bit. The risk of being a bit boring on this one. The show only works if the casting for Dunk and Egg works. If one or other of those castings does not work, then the show falls. It has to have these two characters spot on. From what I've seen, it looks really good. So that's the bit that I'm cautiously happy and excited about. Lorelei Dragon saying, good evening, Robert, and happy spooky season. Would you recommend the Dunk and Egg stories for someone new to Westeros as a way to introduce the world, or do they work better in the context of A Song of Ice and Fire? I think both. That's my take on these. I would definitely recommend them to somebody new. I mean, I don't think in this day and age, I don't think anyone is completely new to Westeros. If you're a fantasy person, I don't think you're. I mean, Game of Thrones was so huge. You've heard of Targaryens. You know that this is a medieval world with some magical elements to it. So I don't think there's anyone who's likely to arrive completely new. And I think that you've got enough information just from cultural osmosis that would allow you to read these. I think they do work best as somebody who's read the main stories and then has this. It's almost like a palate cleanser. A different style, a different feel. It's just nice. Um, and it gives you these extra elements that, if you know what to look for, are there. If you're not into the series, the Song of Ice and series as a whole, then you get good stories, but you don't necessarily know what all the implications are of. Oh, so they stopped the Second Blackfire Rebellion. What does that even mean? So Baelor Breakspear's dead. Okay, I get that the heir to the throne dying was a big thing. You might miss a few of the kind of the nuances that are going on there. So I think they work for new people, but I think if you know what you're doing, if you know the world, then you get extra layers out of this. Bear Island saying, "Hello, Robert. I hope you and Dan are well. Bloodraven takes special notice of Dunk when he sees him in a crowd. We may not have it on page, but how many other times do you think this has happened? Even before going north of the wall, he seems to have had an ability to mark someone as having greater importance, though he may not know yet what that will look like. What are your thoughts?" Okay, so this, I think, is one of the most fascinating little sections. This is Dunk thinking back to when he was younger, when before Sir Arlen chose him, and he was in King's Landing. He's, as far as we can tell, he's probably quite tall, but one of the sort of unremarkable street children there. He remembers this. 6 years ago in King's Landing, Dunk had seen him, Bloodraven, with his own two eyes, as he rode a pale horse up the street of steel with 50 raven's teeth behind him. That was before King Aerys had ascended to the Iron Throne and made him the Hand. But even so, he cut a striking figure, garbed in smoke and scarlet with Dark Sister on his hip. His pallid skin and bone-white hair made him look a living corpse. Across his cheek and chin spread a wine-stained birthmark that was supposed to resemble a red raven, though Dunk only saw an ob-shaped blotch of discoloured skin. He stared so hard that Bloodraven felt it. The king's sorcerer had turned to study him as he went by. He had one eye, and that one red. The other was an empty socket. The gift Bittersteel had given him upon the red grass field. Yet it seemed to Dunk that both eyes had looked right through his skin, down into his very soul. So this is one of those things that you could overinterpret. I probably do overinterpret it. But Dunk is just one of many. And they were all looking at Bloodraven. And yet Bloodraven just looks at Dunk. And not just like a passing glance, he seems to actually properly stare at him, which seems to imply that he somehow magically knew that there was something special about Dunk. He might not have known what. As a complete aside here, I love this little bit of character study that George R. R. Martin does here. When we get this description of Bloodraven, it says, "Now, across his cheek and chin spread a wine-stained birthmark that was supposed to resemble the red raven," which is like, yeah, so this is, people think this is so obvious, Bloodraven is his nickname because of his birthmark. You look at it and say, there's a raven in red. But Dunk, no, not so much. Dunk only saw an odd-shaped blotch of discoloured skin. This tells us he's not a man with imagination. He's not a man who looks at something and sees the magic in it. He just sees, that's just a blotch of mismatched skin, discoloured skin. So it's like, that tells us a huge amount about Dunk and his lack of imagination, for sort of want of a better phrase. But in all of those things, what is this some special talent from Bloodraven. Maybe. We don't know. George R. R. Martin has not told us the limits and extents of Bloodraven's powers or of magic in and of itself. What seems very clear is that Bloodraven did see him and did see something important, something interesting going on with him. As I say, for me, maybe he saw a little bit of the future and because of what's going. Even just in the 3 stories we've had so far, Dunk is in many ways responsible for saving the life of a future king, for the death of a crown prince, for ending an entire rebellion. He is clearly very important to, at that point, the future of the next 10 years or so in the Seven Kingdoms. Could Bloodraven have seen the future? He says to Bran much later that I can't remember exactly what it is. The future is just like shifting shadows. So the implication is that you might see some hints of the future, but not everything. Rustler saying, "Hey Robert, hope you and Dan the dog are well. I'm actually more hyped for Night of the Seven Kingdoms than House of the Dragon. My only concern is that the Egg actor may age out if George doesn't release any new novels soon. Do you think Dunk will eventually be officially knighted or tell Egg he never was? Or is it better for the story that he remains a character with all the virtues of a good knight without ever really getting the title?" Okay, so in terms of the actor, they have soft commissioned seasons 2 and 3, and I think they're going to film them back to back. As the filming, the time, the chunk of time they need for filming is actually not as significant as you might think. It's 6 episodes, half an hour per episode. So if you're looking at House of the Dragon, that probably averaged out at hour-long episodes, and they had 8. They had 10 in the first season. So this is 12. This is basically like just a slightly longer extra season. So the fact that they're doing 2 seasons back to back, not such a big thing. What that does mean is that the actor he'll be a year or so older, but not so much older that it's going to really impact on things. And he should be a bit older, as we've seen. So the first 3 stories do take place over about a 3-year period. Where they might go after that, we'll have to wait for George R. R. Martin. As for will he get knighted, I do like this idea that he never does officially get knighted, because it does fit in with this kind of irony of the true knight that isn't actually a knight. But it is possible that he might get knighted, particularly if he's then promoted to the Kingsguard. I could well imagine that he gets this kind of crisis of confidence, and he has to say to Egg, "I'm really sorry, but I'm actually not really a knight," because at that point he will have to, and we don't know the exact Kingsguard vows, but he will have to take more vows as a knight. So perhaps it is that he realizes that he can't say as a knight, da-da-da-da-da. So maybe that's the moment. But this doesn't have to be a big thing. This could just be private. We know that, I've said before, a knight can make another knight. So can a king. In fact, Sir Barristan was knighted by Egg on the 5th. So Egg has got a track record of this. He can knight people. So it would not surprise me if, he ends up doing that for Dunk. Alhad, did Rohan Weber burn the forest in the Swan Sword, called Watts Wood? Could you also speak a bit more about Rohan? She seems to be clever, charming, and kind-hearted on the first read. However, on second read, I thought there is a lot more to her than we see, essentially through Dunk's POV. It's also interesting that she disappeared, probably with Dunk, after being the lady of the richest house in Westeros for so long. So I think I've covered the disappearance already. I think you're exactly right with your take on the second reading. The Swan Sword is quite a deceptive book. Is that because we read it from Dunk's perspective, we only just see the things that he thinks and notices. So we have to kind of read between the lines. And if you take it from her perspective is she has to remarry. She's going to be thrown out, basically, if she doesn't remarry very soon. And the only option she really has at that moment in time is this guy called the Long Inch, Lucas Long Inch, Sir Lucas Long Inch, who basically has said that he's going to be protecting her from any other suitors, and he also wants to marry her himself. She clearly doesn't like him. She clearly doesn't want to marry him. So if we take that into consideration and then think, this is a story of what does a clever woman do in order to get rid of this suitor that she doesn't want and get somebody that she is more amenable to. And if you then take that as the perspective, you say, okay, so maybe she needs to engineer some kind of squabble with her neighbor, who she seems to like and get on with. And in doing that, particularly as she's now seen that they've got what looks like a pretty impressive knight working for them, engineer a battle that could lead to Sir Lucas's death. And after that, she could come to some kind of negotiated peace, which includes marrying the two lands. The border dispute is about the fact that there's a drought on at the time, and she dams the river, which serves both their lands. And so the obvious answer to this is, well, you merge your lands and get rid of the dam. That's the. It's a matter of how do you get to that point. Now, she, the kind of the setup is that she is, first of all, she expresses outrage at the fact that one of her people was attacked, forcing there to be some sort of confrontation, and presumably knowing that Sir Bannerford is not going to turn up and take hand himself into justice. So she can be outraged at this, and then sends away the delegation that comes to talk to her by saying, I will send sword and fire, which is an interesting choice of words, because then this wood, which happens to be in her neighbour's land, burns down. They obviously accuse her. You said the word fire. Now there's a fire. And she's like, what? It's not me. So she is then outraged by that. And the only way that they can get some kind of conclusion on this is by having their champions fight. If you look at the story from that perspective, she's been manipulating the whole thing just to get rid of Sir Lucas and to marry the person she wants and to merge their two lands. Dunk doesn't really notice any of this, but I think we're supposed to. Now, it's not 100%. At no point do we hear her actually give an order. It seems that there is a drought on, and we're told that the wood is incredibly sort of dry, and people do often think, oh yeah, I think even Dunk thinks to himself, yeah, just like a little spark would send all of that burning. So the potential for there to be just an accidental fire is quite high. It's the timing that's the issue. This happens the very day after she threatens about fire, and it happens the very day after Dunk goes to meet her. And she can, take his measure. And so the the coincidence seems very strong, to the extent that you go, well, who actually benefits from this? Who certainly not Sir Eustace. That's his woodland that's burned down. He's not the person who benefits from it. The only person who potentially benefits from it is her. If she can use this as a way to prompt that battle, and if she can then use this as a way potentially to be marrying the person that she does want to marry. So I think the answer is yes, probably. We've not got the evidence to say yes, definitely, but yes, probably. Let's go to Ranabem Mitra saying, salutations, and to you too. It's pure guesswork at this point, but do you think we'll get Blackfire and Bloodraven references sprinkled across these 6 episodes? Famously, George R. R. Martin hadn't made the character of Bloodraven and the Blackfires when writing The Hedge Knight, and hence we have so much of them in the second and third book. Plus, the showrunner mentioned that this is a period when Targaryen power is waning so much that they need to make appearances at small tourneys like the one at Ashford. One way to demonstrate the reasoning for this would be to introduce the Blackfires as a concept, and what happened in the Red Grass Field with Bloodraven. What do you think? So I think that there's no need for this as a standalone story. I think that a completely new or new-ish person who's not read the stories, who just knows Game of Thrones, if you just have one character saying the Targaryen power is waning. They've not got dragons at the moment. It's been a while now. Targaryen power is waning, so they're having to make a show of being at places to show that their power and excellence. That I think would work. I don't think they need to be talking about the Blackfire Rebellion or Bloodraven. Bloodraven at this point is not Hand of the King, so whereas he's a or is he a Hand of the King? I lose track. He is he is an important figure, but his importance grows over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. So forget that me saying he wasn't Hand of the King, but the need for him to be there, Baelor was it. Here's me, sorry, it's getting late for me. So at the time Baelor was Hand of the King, he was the heir to the throne and Hand of the King. Now, I don't think we need to explain all the background plot as to why the Targaryens. I think the absence of dragons is a clear enough reason for most casual viewers to understand the Targaryens need to be doing other things to be showing that they're powerful. Bloodraven, I think a couple of mentions will probably be good enough. And as for the Blackfire Rebellion, we need to know about that in advance of season 3. So maybe a little bit of a mention in story 2, Swan Sword. That's when this really kind of ramps up. So Eustace is always telling these tales, explaining what happened, how the country was divided, etc., etc. That is what set these things up for story 3. I think they can do that probably on the TV show as well. So I'm expecting a few mentions here and there, but not a significant amount, because that won't pay off in this story, and it won't pay off in the next story either. It will only be the third story that it will. Ryan's Orcas saying, hi, Robert. All these other shows, George R. R. Martin has time for that. Why can't he release at least half of The Winds of Winter? I read the books in the early 2000s. Never read the stories, the novellas that tell the stories of Dunk and Egg. Have a good podcast. Well, thank you very much. I entirely get your frustration here. As for well, first of all, do read the stories because they are excellent. They're a very different feel, but very much a part of this world. As for his time commitment on this, and it's quite hard to say, it has to be said, he was engaged with this. He's not the showrunner. He's not a writer on it. He definitely has had a few long meetings about it, let's put it that way. He definitely took time to visit the set, and he's provided feedback on various things. So this has engaged his time. We shouldn't pretend otherwise. And yes, that is time that he could be spending on the Winds of Winter. Again, we shouldn't pretend otherwise. But I don't think we can say this is the reason the Winds of Winter hasn't happened. I know you weren't saying that, but it's like, well, he's had a few years now. Take as long as you need, George. I'm very happy for that. But yeah, all bits of extra content, I'm very happy about. Kayla Jones saying, "Hello, Robert. I guess spoiler alert for the Mystery Knight, but I feel knowledge of the first Blackfire Rebellion and the Blackfires in general is definitely needed for the payoff of the twist in the Mystery Knight to be fulfilling. In general, even the first story is taking place in the backdrop to the aftermath of the first rebellion. But with Dunk, we're so close to the ground, it's not vital to the story. Since it becomes so important later on, do you think we'll get much backstory or build-up about the Blackfires in the first season?" Yeah, so this is sort of roughly in the same ground that we were covering just a moment ago. So yes, this is the background to what's going on. It wasn't an important part of story one. I think that they should be sowing the seeds in story two. Story three, the payoff does require you to understand a little bit, but with good writing, you don't need to know all the details. All you need to, if you're a casual viewer, in order for that payoff to work, what you need is to understand, oh, there's the Blackfires is like another branch off of the Targaryens, and they had a rebellion, and now this is them planning another one. That's all you need, and you can do that quite easily in just a few conversations. Some in book two, season two, some at the beginning of season three, and in fact, you get a lot of that. You get the Dunk and Egg sort of stop off en route to White Walls. They stop off and have a happy little chat to a few other knights on their way there. One of whom may be somebody in disguise, but they're talking to people, and this comes out. That's how George R. R. Martin, within that story, set it up himself. So I think in 6 episodes they could set things up in episodes 1 and 2 that allow the payoff in episode 6. 444 saying, "Hi, Robert. I must admit that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is my top 3 of short fiction, so I'm a little nervous about this adaptation. It's HBO, so I'm pretty sure that scenery, casting, directing, cinematography, etc. will be top-notch, but I'm worried about the additional stuff that they have to write to fill all 6 episodes. Do we know what else, except the novella itself, they want to show there?" No. And so I'm also nervous, but from what I've seen, I'm being reassured. And from what I've heard, I'm being reassured. I think it is quite telling how George R. Martin does, at this stage, he doesn't need to promote any of these things. I think it's telling that he has happily sat on a stage with the showrunner and the stars to be promoting this now. I would be surprised if you'll see him do the same for House of the Dragon season 3, for example. So I think the fact that he has watched this now, he's seen it. So I think the fact that he is doing that seems to imply that he at least is happy with what's there. In terms of time, for me, 6 30-minute episodes, that's 3 hours of content. That feels about right. If it were much longer, I would definitely be worried that they were adding in extra stuff. If it were much shorter, I would be worried they'd be cutting stuff out. The level that we've got, because it is only 30 minutes per episode, the level that we've got of 3 hours, that's a long film. And I think if you had to sort of say to people if you've read the stories, what is it? Is this like a feature length, like 20 episode season, or is it like a a film, then I think most people will probably say, well, maybe a really long film, or a really short series, which is kind of where we're at. So I'm quite relaxed about this. In terms of the mood music, we've got what we've seen from the trailer is, I mean, there's some dialogue there that's not in the books, but that seems to be in keeping with it, and it doesn't seem to be sort of adding much extra except for a few laughs and a little bit of character development, perhaps. So I'm okay with that. In terms of adding extra stuff in, the only thing that I've heard that they're doing, there will be at least one flashback to Dunk when he was younger in King's Landing. Now, he does think about his youth, not as much as he thinks about Sir Arlen, it has to be said. He thinks about Sir Arlen a lot, but he does think about his youth. So this isn't huge amounts of extra, but if they've got various named characters for his friends, and they're going to actually have like proper scenes there, then that is adding in extra. If this means that we're going to learn a little bit about where he comes from and why, then I think I'm okay with that. It's yeah, I don't think they're adding in much. I wouldn't worry about this too much. Incidentally, I know you're also a Witcher fan, and I should probably just drop in here that this is quite exciting times for Witcher fans as well. There is a new book. If you've missed this, there is a new Witcher book, proper from Andrzej Sapkowski, a new Geralt of Rivia official book, and I'm most of the way through that. I'm listening to it rather than reading it. I listen to it on my dog walks, and it's really good. I'm really enjoying it. There is a lot of lore drops, it has to be said. It does feel a little bit so far, a little bit like the author is perhaps correcting a couple of things that we've seen in some of the recent TV show and spin-offs. But yeah, it's good fun. Basically, it's no spoilers, but this is Geralt on his first set of missions as a Witcher, freshly emerging from Kaer Morhen and then doing the Witcher thing. So that's the pitch, and I think it's really good. I will do a video at least on that. The things that we've learned, the law changes we've got, or not law changes, law clarifications that we've got. Zvibo saying, "Hi Rot, been loving the mysteries streams recently, along with In Deep Sleep. I'm glad people are liking In Deep Sleep. The trailer for the show looked great, although I wish they would allow things to be a bit more colourful, especially for Attorney. I know they have now greenlit 2 more seasons, presumably covering the next couple of books, but these things do take a while to film. Is there a risk of Egg's actor aging out of the role? What is the in-world timeline of the existing stories? How would any future stories fit into that?" Okay, so in terms of the color, I think I've covered a few of those things already, like the actor aging up and things like that. The in-world timeline, I think I've also covered. But in the first bit about the color, I think it's quite interesting. One of the first things that I saw, obviously, I paid a lot of attention to the sort of the people's reactions to these things. We had before the trailer, yesterday and the day before, they dropped a few different things. There was a teaser for the trailer, which was really quite nice. It was only about 5-10 seconds long, but I quite enjoyed it. Plus, there's quite a few still shots, and I think one of the overwhelming things that people said was it's brighter compared to the old Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, which is a lot of it's quite dark, a lot of interiors. This is a lot of exteriors. George R. R. Martin is a big fan of color for Tony's. It's one of the things he said, incidentally. He said he had 3 conditions for House of the Dragon. This is going back a little while now, but he had 3 conditions. That he said he wanted Jaehaerys II written back into the timeline, which they have done. I mean, Jaehaerys II doesn't happen during the Dance of the Dragons. He happens a lot later. But Game of Thrones, for various reasons, they just wrote him out of the timeline. So he wanted Jaehaerys II put back into the TV timeline. He wanted the dragons to be more colourful and more clearly differentiated, which they did do. If you think Dany's dragons all seem relatively similar, yes, they had different colours, but they were relatively similar. Now, if you think about the design of the dragons in House of the Dragon, uh, there's different types. There's sort of the long worm-like ones. There's the really quite large ones like Vhagar. So Caraxes is the sort of the more worm-like one. So they've got 3, 4, 5 different types of dragons, and the colours are more pronounced. He also said he wanted more emphasis placed on the sigils and differentiation between different houses, which they did a little bit of, it has to be said as well. I think that we will see this here. It would be my guess that we will have a lot more, particularly in the tourney itself, a lot more showing who is who by what's painted on their shield or something like that. So yeah, I can understand we didn't see a lot of that. The bits of knights charging at each other looked like it was the Trial of the Seven, rather, which they seem to have made more mistier and moodier, rather than the actual tourney itself, where you just get one knight coming up against another one. Hi. Adam Keats. That was the end of my Duncan Egg questions. I've got 2, 3 more questions, a couple of more questions from my patrons on A Song of Ice and Fire related things. But now is a good time to drop any questions you have into the chat. Carl Snarks, that was just going into the chat. This was a little while ago, saying he mentioned how George Martin mentioned how he started Game of Thrones with only 7 POVs, but it grew and grew, and now he wishes he could go back and smack himself. Yeah. So having a quick flick through. Carl Plasnak saying it is a bit gloomy, but the tourney is set in the Mistwood, so I suppose it fits. Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I haven't seen. I mean, this picture up behind me here looks very bright. It was certainly a couple of the shots we have from the one from behind Duncan Egg when they're sort of looking down. That seemed relatively bright, but yeah, a bit of it was a bit misty. DM Collins saying, I have to admit, I've not read any Witcher books, but if IDG keeps talking about it, it will force me to do so. Well, that makes me very happy. So with just so you know, in terms of sort of my Witcher strategy, I've said this a few times, but in terms of I said Witcher strategy makes it sound so much more grandiose than it actually is. In terms of releasing videos about The Witcher, I found, in all honesty, the demand for Witcher videos is a bit lower. I love doing Witcher videos, but fewer people generally watch them than they do videos about the other things. So I tend to only release them when there's something going on with The Witcher. So at the moment, for example, there's the new book, and season 4 is going to be coming out at the end of this month. So I expect 2 or 3, maybe even 4 different Witcher videos coming out over the course of the next month or so. Then I'll probably put a little pause on that. We will obviously be focusing when we get to January. I didn't even say January the 18th. We've had confirmation of when this is going to happen, and then it is going to be a weekly release schedule for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. So I will obviously be focusing a little bit more in on that. Then. And June is when we're going to be getting House of the Dragon season 3. So I think that's all in terms of stuff coming up. Rings of Power season 3 is likely to be here the second half of next year. I would imagine they're still very much filming that. Right. Okay, so let's go to only two questions I've got. Adam Geets saying, a general Song of Ice and Fire question. I recently watched a video from another YouTuber theorizing that Benjen Stark died, and as he died, he wogged into Mormont's crow. I know you believe the crow is being manipulated by Bloodraven. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this idea. So I had a very quick look. I think this is Quinn the GM, which is quite a fun channel. Hi there, if if you are Quinn the GM, or if you watch his videos, great to see you. Quick shout out there. I've not watched that video, so I have to admit I don't know what evidence is brought forth. I'm very happy to, as you know, I'm very happy to be persuaded onto other perspectives if I think that the evidence demands it. I think I would say a few things about this. So, first of all, Mormont's Raven does act strangely. That bit, I think, is pretty much beyond dispute. There's a point where it seems to be reading things. It seems to be emphasizing, it sort of repeats stuff when it's emphasizing things that it wants. It eats corn, which is weird for a raven to start with, and yeah, it's when I say it's very clear on what it wants. It more than anything else helped pick Jon Snow as the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. It when they were having the vote, it then was like circling around, squawking "Snow, Snow, Snow," and like landing in front of him, and everyone said, "Oh, one wants Raven, wants Jon Snow." Um, when the others were getting very close to the Night's Watch, when they were camped out at Craster's Keep, then it's like they're shouting out "Dead, dead, dead," and then saying "Run, run, run." So it's clearly trying to communicate things. So that is all there. There's something going on. I think almost everyone's agreed on the fact that there's something going on. Benjen, we don't hear that there's anything there with him that suggests that he was a skin changer. I think just because the generation below all seem to doesn't necessarily mean the generation above were. We've not got any indication that Ned was. There possible hints with Lyanna, but we don't know enough there at all. We don't get any hints that Brandon was. We don't get any hints that Rickard, the father, was. I don't think we need to be looking specifically for the Starks to be a skin changer. Only 1 in 1,000 is a skin changer, says Bloodraven. So I don't think we're specifically looking for. Might he be dead? Yeah, I think there's a chance. But he didn't die. I think it's pretty clear that he didn't die in the first attack from the others, or otherwise he would have been one of those who was raised as a white and made their way back to the wall. So I think the main thing for me there, the reason why I think it's Bloodraven, is that the things that it does fit Bloodraven's plan. They fit what we know of what Bloodraven wants. So it is there when Jon gets his dream of being the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai reborn. Then who's there waking him up? It's the Raven. The Raven seems to be there, right by his head while he was having that dream. While Jon is there being made Lord Commander, it's the Raven making him Lord Commander, and so on. This is, it seems to be the kind of things you'd expect Bloodraven to be doing, seems to be what that Raven was. Does that mean it wasn't Benjen? No, but personally, I've not seen any evidence to suggest that it is. I'd be interested. I'll have a look at the video at some point. And if I change my mind on it, I will let you know. Let's go to last question from my patrons. Yeldenil, unrelated question about Varys. I wonder why he was made a eunuch. If he really does have king's blood, or any part, surely any part would have sufficed as a sacrifice for blood magic. Do you think someone wanted him not to procreate? Is he possibly the last of a bloodline? Well, it's entirely possible. That whole episode is unclear for a number of reasons. Firstly, because this is Varys telling us, and we shouldn't necessarily believe Varys in everything that he says. He is clearly trying to get Tyrion on side and make Tyrion feel sympathetic and give him a reason to look like he hates magic users. So that's part of the reason. Secondly, he was very young at the time. Thirdly, the context that we're given, even with everything he says, it's a little bit vague as to exactly why and what was going on. The thing that we can say, I think, pretty categorically, assuming that there's elements of truth to this, is in order to do magic, we know two things. In George R. R. Martin's world, there needs to be intentionality and there needs to be sacrifice. Those two things, 99% of the time, need to be there. There are some exceptions, but 99% of the time you'll find intentionality and you'll find sacrifice. The intentionality is definitely there. This magician intended to talk to whoever it was in the flames, and so that's there. The sacrifice was Varys. Now, if the working assumption, I did a video on this if you're interested. The working assumption that I have is that he was picked because you could, as a magician, out looking for any old random sacrifice, you could just picked up any old street child. He didn't. He went to a specific child who was employed as part of a mama's troupe and offered a lot of money for that specific child. So whoever it was wanted a wire. They wanted that person, that specific boy, which seems to imply there is something about Varys. Now, I think the most likely implication is that it's because he was from some line of Blackfires or Targaryens or something like that, probably a bastard after many generations. And if you're going to make a sacrifice, then obviously the top sacrifice would be to kill him. But then what else is there after that? Well, to end the bloodline would give you a huge amount. That would be a huge sacrifice. So that's my working assumption, is that somebody did that, chose him deliberately because of who he was that he perhaps didn't know, and then did that particular sacrifice because it was going to be quite a powerful one. Right, let's have a quick flick through. Samal Soul saying, "Where are you in the world? Is it not bedtime?" Thank you very much. I'm in the UK, and yes, it is indeed bedtime. Let's go to, I don't know whether that was you asking me or asking somebody else. Kira Adele saying, "Going to read his Dark Materials books soon." Yeah, they're excellent as well. Train Surfer saying, "Now is the Winterfell of our discontent." I like it. And I think that's probably Cam's Crash Course is saying, "I thought both Lyanna and Brandon referred to as centaurs, but she was the better rider of them." Hello, everyone. Yeah, so she was. I remember exactly what I said a moment ago. There are hints with Lyanna that she was half horse. That one, I think, was the actual phrase. Maybe even from Roose Bolton. And so which implies that she was a very good rider. Does that mean that she was a skin changer? No. It might just mean that she's a very good rider, but it's possible. So there are hints, but we can't actually say any more than that. I hope you found this good. As I say, I didn't do quite deliberately didn't do a breakdown of the trailer. Part of the reason with that is that actually I don't think there's anything that surprising in it. I'm sort of coming back around to the trailer towards the end of this stream, is that when a lot of these trailer breakdowns, when you got like House of the Dragon or something, it's like, oh, well, what's happening in that scene? Why are those people talking to each other? What's going on here? Who's this group of people? When I was watching that trailer, it's just the first one. There's much more to come, I'm sure. There was nothing there that made me go, ah, that's not right. That's not in the books. There are some scenes which are kind of, they look made up, but sympathetic made up, and not changing huge amounts of the plot. It's just Dunk being there in and around the tourney. So there's a lot there to like, and there's not a lot there that I could kind of pick at or feel that I need to be making huge amounts of explanations for. I felt it was just a really well put together trailer that it was easy access for people who weren't quite as nerdy as perhaps we are. So that is that's why I did that. I think I was going to do a Lord of the Rings one this time, maybe next week, or actually no, I know I'm doing next week. Next week, I I have a few times done Tinfoil Thursdays, which has been great fun, and I've just said to people, just give me your tinfoil theories and we'll talk about them. Thought I'd tweak it a little bit. This is just a thought, and I don't know exactly what to call it. Maybe Headcanon Thursday, something along those lines. I would love to know what you don't think this is a tinfoil. You think this makes sense. You can't prove it, but it kind of fits all the facts for you. You know the kind of things that we're talking about. That this is my headcanon. That this is what is going on. So, for example, what have we got? Howland and Ashara is just, as a classic example. For me, that's headcanon. That just works on every layer. I haven't got 100% proof on it, but I think all the facts that we've been given, that they support it, and so that works for me. I'd love to know, and we'll do this next week, and I'll get headcanon from my patrons, and then we'll pick up as many as we can in the chat as we're going through. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And then we'll do a Lord of the Rings one maybe the week after that. Good. So with that, let's say, don't forget to check out, this will be going on to In Deep Sleep in 2 or 3 weeks' time. If you do go to sleep to these videos, you're very welcome to. But if you want them advert free inside that, with also a little bit of cozy background noise and visuals and things like that, that's what In Deep Sleep is. It's the audio from this stripped out and put into a relaxing background, and then the video goes on for 8 hours so you can get a full night's sleep. There's that, the Well Told Tale, which is my audiobook channel. We're just nearing the end of the War of the Worlds, so I think I've been a bit behind on uploading them, but we've got another one which is, I think, 2 more episodes to go, and they'll come up over the next 2 weeks. And then on the main channel, normal videos as always. So thank you so much. Moderators, you are amazing. Thank you again. If you're there in the chat, please send them a nice little bit of love. Patrons, thank you. If you would like to support this channel, I hugely appreciate it. The best way to do that is through Patreon. There is a link somewhere on your screen. And if you are watching this on IDG Live a little bit later, appearing somewhere around here, it's going to be a link to some other live streams that I've done. Appearing somewhere around here is a link to my Patreon page. That is all for this time. Thanks everyone, take care, and I'll see you again next time.